And welcome on this rainy day, So we will get right into the text. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Thank you. And we're moving along with Parshat Sh'mini, with the various animals that are prohibited. So right now we went through the birds, the last thing, and we also started to talk about insects as well, right? So interestingly enough, so basically, you know that insects are verboten, essentially. However, there's one exception, and we're going to deal with it right now. However, it's ze tochlu. This you can eat. Mikol sheretz ha'of. From all those swarming, flying creatures. Ha'olech arba'a, and which walk on four. By the way, four doesn't, of course, we know that insects have 6 legs, and Rashi explains it a little bit, but regardless, we're talking about insects. It just means all feet on the ground. Asher lo, which do not have, right? But here, interestingly enough, this, you notice it says lo kri, which would mean who have, right? Lo with a vav means to him. Lo with an aleph means no. So let's see how this sentence plays out. Kra'ayim mima'al leraglav. So the question is, what do we go with? What tradition do we go with? Do we go with the kativ? This is the kativ, or the kri? See, this is kri in Hebrew, which means how we understand it. So we'd have to say that we understand this to mean that it has kra'ayim mima'al, legs up mima'al leraglav. So on it has, I assume, if you think about it, how a locust's back legs look, right? And that's what we're talking about. Lenater bahen al haaretz, to jump with them on the earth. So in other words, the way a locust's back legs look, which are quite unique as opposed to other insects. Let's take a look at Rashi. Al arba, so it means al arba raglaim, so on 4 legs, when it says on arba, because it doesn't say what for. Okay. Let's see. Mima'al raglav, above his legs. Letzavaro, okay. So look at this, how Rashi's understanding this. Samuch letzavaro means next to its neck. Yesh lo kamin shtei raglayim, okay, that it has, this is how he's explaining how it has 6 legs, right? It has a sort of 2 legs, levad arba raglav, apart from its other 4 legs. So those 2 front legs have somewhat of a different function than the 4 back legs. And when it wants to fly and jump from the earth, from the land, mitchazek ba'otan shtei kra'ayim. It strengthens those 2 legs. So again, if you look where the locust legs come, right? They're all, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have a picture to show you, but I'm trying to visualize it, and they're all pretty much right towards the back of its head. So that's why I think Rashi's calling it its neck. Okay. Uporeach, and it flies. V'yesh mehen harbe, okay, and there are many such kinds of insects. Ke'otan shekorin. Okay, so this is interesting because this particular languste, right, actually means a lobster, right? And look at this, how the Yiddish is. This is sort of interesting, I would have to say, because this isn't what we're thinking about, right? Ein Meerkrebs. and that means a crab. Aval ein anu baki'in bahen barba'a simane tahara. Okay. So he says, but we do not have any expertise in determining. Therefore, they have four different indications that they are in fact tahor, that they're in fact pure, that they're in fact kosher. Okay. Ne'emru bahem arba raglaim. So it says, I believe the period goes here. So regarding them, it's stated they have four legs, the arba knafayim, and they have four wings, the karsulin elu, and they also have ankles. Elu kra'ayim haktuvim, and this is the kra'ayim mentioned, haktuvim kan, that is being mentioned here, when it says the ankles are above the legs, right? Uknafav chofin et rovo, and its wings cover up most of the animal, most of the insect, excuse me. V'chol simanin halalu, and all these indications, mitzuyin be'ota, are found in those shebenotenu, which we find amongst us. Aval yesh shiroshan, but the point is, so why can't we eat locusts? I guess, I don't know, chocolate-covered locusts. Maybe it's a delicacy. They do, by the way, I'll tell you in a moment. But anyway, aval yesh shiroshan aroch, but in some cases, their heads are elongated. V'yesh she'ein lahem zanav, and there's certain ones of them that do not have a tail on the back. V'tzarich sheyehe shmo chagav. Not only that, but it has to have the name of a chagav, right? In other words, it has to be identified as a chagav. Uvazeh ein anu yodim lahavdil beinehem, and through this we cannot distinguish. So there are no Ashkenazic Jews that actually eat or consume locusts. But I have been told that the Sephardic Jews actually do have a tradition of identifying certain types of locusts or grasshoppers, etc., as being kosher. So it's interesting that amongst the Sephardic Jews, they do in fact have that tradition. But Rashi is of course representing Ashkenazic Jewry. By the way, the whole question, right? We're going to get into, see the words here in the Hebrew. The whole issue of how Jews, the Jewish people, right, the children of Israel, divided into these two major groups of Ashkenazic and Sephardi is I think still a question that eludes scholars. That is to say, there are theories about it. One theory, I believe, is that Sephardic Jews, I hope I don't have this the wrong way around, but that Sephardic Jews followed the Babylonian Talmud, and that Ashkenazic Jews are more influenced by the Jerusalem Talmud, although the truth is that, as far as I know, both groups essentially study and rely on the Babylonian Talmud. On the other hand, my understanding is that Sephardic Jews rely more on Maimonides and his codification of Jewish law, the Mishnah Torah, whereas we know that Ashkenazic Jews follow the Shulchan Aruch and the Mapa and the commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. So that at least is a clearer one, but that particular Shulchan Aruch, I think, is somewhere around the 16th century, and I believe the distinction between Ashkenazic and Sephardic Jews goes much earlier than that. So just an interesting feature. And if any of you want to comment, if any of you have any background, and those, if you happen to be watching this and you want to send me an email or mark in your comments, I'd be interested. And I certainly don't want to mislead or misinform anybody. I can tell you that the Talmud theory I heard a long, long time ago, and so sadly I might have it mixed up. At least I know that Ashkenazic Jews absolutely study rigorously the Babylonian Talmud. Okay, so going on now, we're going to define some of these things. Et ele mehem tochelu, These you may eat, you may consume. Et ha'arbe lemino, locusts of their species, of their kind. Et ha'solam leminehu, the bold locust. This is Sfaria, that where I'm getting this particular translation. Again, I would have to imagine that that the Talmud would discuss this, and possibly the Sifra tries to give us a better sense of what its contemporary, what the contemporary species is, right, according to its kind, the et hachargol leminehu, and the crickets according to their kind, the et hechavgav leminehu, and grasshoppers according to their kind. There is no Rashi on that. So v'chol sheretz ha'of, right, and any swarming creatures. We're really talking obviously about insects. Asher lo arba lagaim, and this is interesting. So this is lo with a vav, right, which have 4 legs. Sheketzu lachem. However, it is considered to be detestable. To you, it shall be detestable. So these have to have those rear legs that have the ankles above the legs, above the body, the way grasshoppers have, etc. So the whole sheretz ha'of, and all the swarming flying creatures. And this here is from the Sifra, the Torah Kohanim, ba lelamed, right? So this is interesting because we've already said this, already mentioned this. So why the repetition? Ba lelamed, this comes to tell you, she'im yesh lo chamesh tahor. If you happen to come across a 5-legged insect like this, well, wow. In other words, it would have to have actually 7 legs, right? Because we're talking about 6 normally, and again, an extra leg is what it seems to be talking about here. At least that is how I'd understand it. Ula'ela titama litama'u, and regarding these, you shall become impure. Kol hanoger benivlatam, anyone who touches their carcasses, yitma ad ha'erev, shall be impure until evening, until nightfall, essentially. Ula'ela, and to these. And again, this is from the Torah Kohanim. Ha'atidim, so it says, actually, that this Ela here is actually the beginning of a new thought. Ha'atidim lehe'amer lamata b'inyan, those that are going to be mentioned below. In other words, it's not talking about the insects that we've just talked about. At least that's how I would have to understand the Rashi. It's talking about that will follow. Tit'amu, you shall become impure. What is the implication? Lomar, that is to say, b'nigiyatam yesh tuma. That is to say that even just touching what is going to follow, there is going to be tuma, there's going to be impurity. And we're going to get to those right now. Yes, we're going to see. Okay. Next page. So we talked about touching, and now we're talking about carrying, one who carries their carcasses. Yechabes begadav, he's going to have to wash his clothes, the tameh ad ha'arev, and is going to be impure until evening. So let's see what this says. Right, both of them say, right, until evening. But we're going to see let's see if there's a Rashi on this. Here we go. V'chol hanoseh benivlatam, anyone who carries their carcass. Kol makom shene'emara tum'at masa. So this is a kind of impurity. There are levels of spiritual impurity. And this is something called tumat masa. Masa means carrying. So there is if you actually not just touch something that's impure, but you actually carry that object that's impure, chamura, it is more stringent. Mi tumat maga. So we had tumat masa, and here we have tumat maga, and that is touching. The tuma that you would derive from touching something. Shehi te'una kibus kivush b'gadim. Why? Because it requires washing your clothing. David.
Yeah, you said we're on a new thought, but so is this touching aspect and impurity uh, just regarding the insects, or are we now on a general topic? Sorry if I'm confused.
Okay, so I believe here we are talking about, at least as that I can have some certainty to, we're talking about the animals that are going to be mentioned in a moment.
Okay, we're on a new. Okay, great, thank you.
I don't believe we're talking about the insects.
Okay, yeah, because you
Okay.
said we should stop. Okay, got it.
Right. So notice, so just to review, tumat maga, the tuma you get from touching something, you still are unclean until evening, right? Until nightfall. However, tumat masa, but with regard to the tuma you get from actually carrying one of these carcasses, then you have to wash your clothes as well. So it's a higher level of impurity. This is honestly an arcane subject, and yet I think it is deeply connected to immortality and to looking at life in a far broader and universal sense than we normally look at life. It is actually opening a window for us because I really believe that what religion tries to do in trying to help us discover significance in our lives, in our own lives, to be able to find within our own lives a deep sense of significance. These are the kinds of issues that then arise. And part of it having to do with the idea of immortality and, the fact that consciousness is such an incredible gift, and to see ourselves trying to find ways in which to deeply associate and see ourselves in relationship to the universe and in relationship to the creator of that universe, and to explore what that means and how it affects our own significance. It's interesting. One thing, I was at a service at Beit Tshuva in Los Angeles when I was in Los Angeles, and this is for it's for people who are recovering addicts and have various addictions, and they're encouraged to come up in the course of the service. There are moments of the service where they can come up and share their the thoughts that they have and the process. And pretty much every single one of them said how they felt like a nothing when they came in. Because one of the things this institution does is to really, truly give people a sense of that they're loved. And if you think about it, being loved, sensing love, receiving love is a way of reinforcing your significance and your feelings of significance. And I've felt for a long, long time that the reason why people sometimes do things that are criminal or self-destructive, etc., is because they think of themselves as worthless and as of having no significance whatsoever. So the issue of significance, by the way, significance stroke holiness, same idea. And all these laws are there to help really reinforce these ideas. And part of it, of course, is discipline and saying this is okay, this isn't okay, this is what you do under these circumstances. It all helps to develop that. So let's keep going here a little bit more. I think I got to the end of that Rashi. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Here we go. L'chol ha'behema asher hi mafreset parsa. We've mentioned these animals before, but now we're going a step further and saying, if you touch the carcass, right? For every kind of animal, and behema usually means domestic animals, asher hi mafreset parsa, which has uh, hoofs. It has hoofs. The shesa eno shosat, However, it does not have, those hoofs are not split. The Geira einena ma'ala, and nor does it chew the cud. They are impure to you. Now we know that horses have hoofs that are not split, right? So is it okay to ride a horse? Yes, because we're talking about their nivlatam, their carcasses. Kol hanogea bahem, anyone who touches them, yitma, will become impure. It's a Rashi. Mafreset parsa v'shesa eina shosat. Right? So in other words, it has a parsa. She develops hoofs, but they are not split. So we know that a cow's hoofs are split, and that's why a cow is a kosher animal, likewise with sheep and goats. So he says the specific example of what the Torah has given us is that that it has hoofs, but they're not split. Kagon Gamal, he says, for example, a camel, Sheparsato Stuka Lamala, because its hoof is split above, Aval Lamata hi mechuberet, but the lower part of the hoof is actually connected. Kan limedcha. So here it's teaching you, the Torah is trying to teach you, Shenivlat behemat me'ah, that the carcass of an animal that is unclean, mit'amah, it gives forth impurity. Uvinyan shebesof haparsa, and with regards to this matter, at the end of our parsha, at the end of this section, piresh al behemat Torah. There, it's going to give you the laws regarding tuma and tara of kosher animals, of cows, sheep, and goats, and their nevela, and their carcasses, meaning if they're not shechted, if they're not properly slaughtered, there will be laws regarding those as well. So, interesting. So, Bechol, one more sentence here. Bechol holech al kapav, any animal that walks on its paws. Bechol hachaya holechet al harba, all animals that walk on four. Tmeim hem lachem, they are going to be tamei. Kol hanogea benivlatam, if you touch their carcass, yitma ad ha'erev, shall be impure until evening. Let's take a look at Rashi. Al kapav, he says, okay, on its hands, literally, kagon kelev v'dov v'chatul, such as a dog, a bear, and a cat. Tmehim lahem lachem, they are impure to you, lamaga, to touch. That is, their carcasses are impure. So let's finish up because this is some little paragraph marking here. Nivlatam, and one who carries their carcass, yichabes bagadav. So we see exactly what Rashi was telling us. They will have to wash their clothes, the tamei ana arev, and they will also be impure until nightfall. Tmehim hemalachim. These are to be considered impure to you, and will stop right here. And we know that we are just touching, right? Just touching the beginnings of this subject. And with God's help, if we ever should get to it, you can see there's a ton of Torah Tamima on this that will give us additional information. Yes, David, and I'm going to stop the share. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, glad you stopped the share. That was a very bad pun about touching on this. But anyway, so that was good though. So I was just curious, is this also where the discussion of impurity, is this also why, maybe it's different, why, after we go visit the cemetery or those kinds of things, we come, we have to wash our hands, and it, is that along the same lines, or is that from a different thread?
It comes in a different place. We learn about that. This is not it, because we're talking about animals now. We're not talking about human beings.
Right.
Okay.
I was just, yeah.
So that is actually mentioned in Numbers. We actually read it last week. or a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, yeah, maybe last week, Parshat Parah, in the Parsha of Parah, having to do with the red heifer. You may be a little bit familiar with
Oh,
that
yeah,
concept. That
yeah.
has to do with it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yes. So,
got
but
it.
it's the same basic issue. The issue of Tuma and Tara actually occupies one sixth of the six orders of the Mishnah. In other words, an entire order of the Mishnah is devoted to these issues of Tuma and Tara. And even though for us and the way we live our lives, it seems irrelevant, I feel myself that ignoring these kinds of things is missing out on something. I believe, at least this is my oversimplified way of looking at it, is that we are so comfortable and we live lives that are, for most of us, have lives that are so comfortable and so enjoyable and so fortunate that we see life itself that we are experiencing right now as the be all and end all. And when your life is not so comfortable and when you're struggling, and when then it tends to make you try to look at life, because I think there's this little piece of hope inside of ourselves that there's more to life than perhaps what we're experiencing now. But there's plenty of suffering going on right now as it is. But sadly, I think we get distracted. And of course, money has become a big, big, big thing, and power and stuff like that. I think the older traditions and many of the ones that are out there even now are so aware of how brief life is that what you have now is an eye blink. And putting all your eggs into this basket is a mistake. Judaism is not against having a lovely, wonderful life. It's not against that. It's against making that everything and then neglecting the spiritual side of things. And with that, I'm going to stop my recording.